Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our board meeting for Monday, May 28th. We begin our board meeting with the land acknowledgement. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board acknowledges our presence on ancestral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee Confederacy land as determined by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. The intent of this agreement is for all nations sharing this territory to do so responsibly, respectfully, and sustainably in perpetuity. We respect the long-standing relationships with the local Indigenous communities, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, and the Six Nations of the Grand River. At this time, we kindly ask that you stand for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you once again. Welcome to our board meeting. We're going to jump right into our profiling excellence portion of the agenda. And this is a really exciting moment for all of us once a month at the board to recognize many achievements from our students, our staff, board-wide. So we know we have plenty of folks joining us in the audience today and a lot of really great stories to share. So welcome to our boardroom. And I'm going to kindly call our superintendent, Torrens, to the podium, and he's going to introduce us and welcome our guests. Superintendent.
Thank you, Chair White. It is my pleasure to begin with our student honorees for this month. Our first honoree is Sebastian McPherson from Sherwood Secondary School. He's a $1,000 prize winner for the Government of Canada History Awards. Sebastian is a very focused student who's excited about his learning. He assumes the position of a leader when working in groups, and he encourages others to participate and always makes an effort in class. He's very passionate about his heritage, and this has driven him to participate in the Government of Canada History Award competition. He loves history and politics. These are his true passions. But Sebastian's post-secondary goal is to study political science and then attend law school. He definitely wants to make the world a better place. Unfortunately, he's unable to join us tonight, but we congratulate Sebastian on his award. Our next honoree is Deanna Elaine, Westmount Secondary School. She was won an award from the Optimist Club of Hamilton Youth Appreciation Certificate of Achievement in the Rotman Humanitarian Youth Award. She's an exceptional student at Westmount who has been involved in so many aspects of the school, along with leading our dance marathon fundraiser for McMaster Children's Hospital for 3 years, where she's raised over $11,000. She also champions service dogs in training and has challenged many policies and laws in order to enable accessibility for the service dogs. These dogs are trained to support children with autism. As well, Deanna has been involved in Student Council, our mentorship program, and the Westmount Health Action Team. Deanna aspires to be a politician and one day will be our Prime Minister. Congratulations to her, and I was going to call you down, but you've come down already. Thank you. Do you want me to call them in advance? Our next honoree is Kyle Lehman from Waterdown District High School, the 2017 winner of Canada's History Essay Contest. If he could please come down to the front now. The Government of Canada History Awards were officially announced in June 2013. Their goal is to connect youth in their history by honoring outstanding students and teachers who show an interest in celebrating Canadian history. Students created and submitted essays based on 5 themes: reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, the First World War, the Canadian identity, Expo 67, or the development of a new national historic sites. Participants were required to demonstrate original research, historical analysis, a good knowledge of subject matter, and critical thinking skills. Winners were selected by an independent jury made up of history educators. In all, more than 800 student submissions were received across the country. To put this into context, of the 172 award-winning high school students, 79 recipients live in Ontario, and 4 of these nationally recognized youth are from HWDSB. We're proud to recognize all of our students, apply their accomplishments, and recognize tonight Kyle is one of 3 students from Waterdown District High School. Inspired by their teachers, Rob Flossman, who's also a Governor General's Award recipient for excellence in teaching, and Emily Reynolds, each of the following 3 students were recognized for Canada's history with this national award. So Kyle is a smart and intuitive young man. He understands history and the forces that shape it. His project was on the Vimy Oaks. He was inspired by the fact that an acorn from Vimy was brought back to Canada by a soldier and planted in our community. Congratulations, Kyle. I now ask Madison Tate to please come down. She also is a winner of the 2017 Canada History's Essay Contest. Madison is an amazing young budding historian. Madison's essay was inspired by her personal experience. Her award-winning entry was based on the Japanese-Canadian experience during the Second World War. She immersed herself in the history of her family. Her family moved from Hiroshima to British Columbia at the beginning of the 20th century, only to be interned in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. She has the crate that housed her family's possessions during the ordeal, as well as a letter of apology from Stephen Harper, Prime Minister. Congratulations, Madison. I next call Iman Qureshi to the front, please. She as well is our third winner from Waterdown District High School of Canada's History Essay Contest. Iman's winning entry was based on Canadian identity, titled Identity is What You Are, Not What They See. Iman reflects what she chose this focus, as she believes it's important to talk about how history affects the present. Iman is a remarkable, talented artist with a creative mind and a compassionate heart. She was the one who spearheaded a get well soon card for one of her teachers when he became ill. Such kindness and empathy, all the best characteristics we like to identify as Canadian. Congratulations, Iman. I'd now like to call down Dima Abdel Hafiz from Janet Lee School for her appointment on the 2018-2019 Ministers Student Advisory Council. We are thrilled that Dima was chosen. These are words from her principal, Julie Anderson, was chosen to provide her thoughts and insights on the 2018-2019 Ministers Student Advisory Council. Her commitment to providing ideas and sharing her perspectives has made Janet Lee School a better place, and now she gets to work together with students across the province to make Ontario schools the best they can be. Dima consistently questions, takes risks, and has a positive impact on the school community. In the classroom and out and around the school, Dima demonstrates a commitment to the school community by being a supportive member of Janet Lee. She's an active band member, making a different social club member, and of course has led many of our monthly assemblies and events with grace. Her strong commitment to her faith and a world of justice and peace comes out in all that she does each and every day. We couldn't be more proud. Congratulations, Dima. I now move to the presentations of profiling excellence for staff. So I ask that Joe O'Connor please come to the front. Joe O'Connor has been a profound force of change at Sir John A. Macdonald since the arrival in 2016. He's taken the lead in rethinking assessment and evaluation practices at Sir John A. Macdonald to include more oral format opportunities for students and inclusive project development. This alone has taken grade 10 failure rates down from 24 to 7%, a feat that created invitations to other departments who adopted this format and are seeing similar successes. Aside from the curriculum leadership, Joe has taken the lead in development of the genocide course that is an extension of his own passion for human rights education, something he's cultivated his entire career, attending the yearly Holocaust Symposium, hosting survivors, and traveling to the death camps in Europe. Further to this, Joe has been instrumental in championing Indigenous understanding and learning, such as the Kairos blanket exercise is an experience by all grade 10 students that is mandatory in his course and under his leadership, has integrated support of our Nawe workers in more than at any other time in the school's history. Joe is the recent public school recipient of the Distinguished Sharon Enkin Award for Holocaust Studies and is a stellar educator, leader, and person, most worthy of recognition here tonight. Congratulations, Joe. I'd like to call Deb Brown from Smowick McNabb to the front, please, for her recognition on the 20th Anniversary Legacy Award for the continued excellence in Holocaust education. Deb Brown's been a key member of the McNabb staff for many years. Through those years, she's worked tirelessly to promote a positive school culture and engage students academically. Throughout her career, Deb has sought varied experiences as an educator, and she translates those experiences into engaging and moving lessons for her students. Through her work in genocide studies, she opens eyes and allows students to gain a deeper and broader understanding of their world. One student stated, "If we forget all that has been done to protect us, how soon until we forget what put us in danger in the first place?" This course did not just help me become more connected to the issues of the world around me, it also helped me to become more connected to myself. Deb uses Holocaust and genocide education to give students a deeper understanding of themselves as well as the world around them. Congratulations, Deb. I now call to the front Peter Toth from Dundas Valley Secondary School to acknowledge his 2018 Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence. Peter's natural ability to connect and build positive relationships with students, how he's able to challenge their thinking, and how he supports students to develop their confidence and self-awareness to be positive change in the world are a few of the reasons why he was awarded a Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau earlier this month in Ottawa. Toth, as he's affectionately called by the students at DVSS, can often be found roaming the halls at lunch hour, talking, laughing, and making connections with students, even with ones he doesn't teach. Teaching begins in the hallways, not the classrooms, says Toth. It's about spending time and getting to know them. Students love that Peter takes the time to get to know them, to talk to them, and in their words, treat them like they're real people. As a business and social justice Global Connect teacher, Peter links student thinking to curriculum expectations. He makes connections to what students learn within his classroom to their community, their country, and to the world at large. Using the school's vision and empathetic culture of respect and learning through the lens of human rights, Peter challenges students to incorporate the school vision as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into daily lessons and student inquiries. Students feel valued and validated by Peter. It is his mutual respect and admiration that served as a catalyst for the members of the student body to nominate Peter for the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence. One of his student nominators for the award said, "Peter causes a chain reaction of pure, almost unbelievable learning experiences in every one of his classes. And because of his influence on so many young minds, he's one of the minds that will change this world into what it deserves to be." Congratulations, Peter. And with that, I conclude our Profiling Excellence Awards for May. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Torrens. And just before folks file out, there is one other recognition that happened earlier today that Trustee Beattie brought to our attention. So Trustee Beattie, if you want to go to the podium and introduce the award that we received, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the microphone is now turned off, and I'm not sure how to turn it back on. So I'm just going to have to use my big voice.
No, I think you're just too tall.
I could be. I'm going to have a sore back by the end of that. I'm just going to speak loudly. Earlier this morning at Hamilton City Hall, I received this award on behalf of HWDSB. And what it is the City of Hamilton's Community in Motion Awards, where HWDSB was awarded Advocacy Group of the Year. And this is in response to our hard work with ASST initiatives across our board. You'll recall that roughly 3 years ago, we signed on to the ASST Charter, along with the City of Hamilton and our coterminous board, the Hamilton Wentworth District Catholic School Board. And this morning, we were recognized for the hard work that we're doing for ASST initiatives across the city, getting kids to walk and cycle to and from school. So I want to present this award to Chair White to receive it on behalf of HWDSB. And as I do that, I also want to thank Trustee Danko, who's been working very hard on this file as well, and Director Figueredo for your support. And then there's a superintendent who is responsible for ASST, but it goes beyond just an interest of hers. I believe it is a passion. And thank you so much to Superintendent Sue Dunlop for all of her hard work on this file. and of course to the school communities that are making this happen in our schools across the city. We did have a school that won an award also this morning. Memorial Stony Creek won an award for their hard work with the ASST initiative. And to all the school communities across our board, thank you for the hard work that you're doing in making this a priority.
Thank you once again. Thank you, Trustee Beatty. Thank you, Superintendent Torrens, for introducing all of the great recognitions and acknowledgements for this month. On behalf of the board, I want to thank all of our staff and students, and of course, the families that have joined us today to recognize you. It means a lot to HWDSB. It certainly gives us the character that really makes up who we are. So thank you once again to everyone and the diversity of all of your accomplishments, and we look forward to seeing you in our schools and in the community, and we hope that you enjoy this nice weather and have a great summer as we move through the next couple of weeks. So once again, congratulations. Okay, folks, we're on item number 4, approval of the agenda. Just before we approve the agenda, as always, welcome to trustees, exec council, members of our local media, those that are web streaming at home. I'm sure it's a little bit too hot to make the trek out here today. But with that, thank you very much for attending this evening. We do have regrets from Trustee Deeth, who was here earlier, but had to leave for very important events. And we have Trustee Kathy Archer joining us by phone. Otherwise, we have everyone present this evening. So with that, looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you, Trustee Hicks. Seconded? Seconded by Trustee Van Geffen. All in favor? That is unanimous. Kathy?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. We're moving declarations of conflict of interest. Any declarations on the public agenda? Seeing none, confirmation of the minutes, May 14th in your package. Seeing none, we'll move to item 7, which is our Human Resources Committee report from May 7th. Trustee Deeth, as mentioned, isn't present this evening, but has asked Trustee Bingham to bring the report, and if needed, with the assistance of Superintendent Nunn. But Christine, please.
Okay. The report is from the May 7th. There were 2 monitoring items. The first is violence in the workplace employee incident reporting statistics. Staff presented the report, which was a follow-up for additional information from the March 5th Human Resource Committee meeting. While the number of incidents reported has increased, the amount of lost time has not. The Ministry of Education has indicated that all school boards implement an online incident reporting process for the year 2018-2019. The Ministry of Labour works closely with school boards to implement best practices. Committee members requested that this be an annual report and added to the committee's work plan. And second monitoring item was staffing recruitment and hiring update for the spring of 2018. Staff in human resources have been actively recruiting and hiring both permanent and occasional employment positions to ensure that there are sufficient numbers in all positions. There are no There will be no redundancy among teaching staff this spring in both elementary and secondary panels. Human resource staff has worked closely with staff in communications and community engagement to promote and encourage interested candidates to apply for postings and work in Hamilton. Hiring practices and tools will be reviewed this spring. And with that, I move the report.
Thank you, Trustee Bingham. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Pattison. Thank you. Questions or comments on the HR report? Seeing none. Thank you, Trustee Bingham. All in favor of the motion? That is unanimous. Kathy?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you very much. Moving to item number 8, our policy committee report for May 9th. Once again, we'll go to the chair of the committee, Trustee Bingham.
May 9th committee meeting, we had an action items. A is accommodation of staff. The committee considered the accommodation of staff policy, which was up for its scheduled review. There was a minor change made to the policy, which included the removal of the legislative reference in the purpose and replaced with to foster the development of trustful and respectful relationships. The second action item was recruitment and selection. The committee considered the recruitment and selection policy as it was up for its scheduled review. C, staff progressive discipline. The committee considered the staff progressive discipline policy, which was up for its scheduled review. There was a discussion of the need to have a procedure under this policy. Staff felt that there could be a procedure created that followed the collective agreement. However, due to the varying scenarios that occur, this would need to be at a high-level procedure. D, occupational health and safety, workplace violence, and harassment prevention. The committee considered the two policies that were up for their annual review, occupational health and safety policy and workplace violence and harassment prevention policy. There were no recommended changes. E, medical health supports. Committee considered the medical health supports. There was discussion of having a mental health support policy or where such a policy would reside. Trying to remember what the second one was. On the motion of Trustee Van Geffen, Policy Committee recommends that the staff explore the creation of a mental health support policy or enhancements to an existing policy and procedures and report back to the Policy Committee. And with that, I move the report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Bingham. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Van Geffen, thank you. Questions or comments to the policy report? There are numerous items. Any questions or comments? Thank you. Looking the wrong way. We'll begin with student trustee. You're not even. Oh, there we go. Student trustee High seem to have won the. There you go. Please.
Thank you. For action item A, it's accommodation of staff. It's specifically for staff with disabilities, right?
Thank you very much. We'll go to. This was Jamie, Superintendent Nunn. I believe you were supporting these items. Superintendent Nunn.
Through you, Mr. Chair, accommodation for all staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Student Trustee High. Student Trustee Jail.
Thank you. So this one's about both the occupational health and safety and the workplace violence and harassment prevention, because it could be related to either. So the focus of these policies is obviously staff, but I'm wondering how we're considering students in cases of workplace violence, should they be involved. So for example, if a student were involved in an incident with a staff member, I'm wondering whether it's in a different policy or somehow embedded in this one, whether we could do that to ensure the fair treatment, dignity, and consider the privacy and diversity of the students involved potentially in an incident. Because this is all the language is about the staff, and that's the priority. I'm wondering what's in place to protect the students in these kinds of cases.
Good question. Thank you very much. We'll go to Superintendent Nunn. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Matthew Kwan, Manager for Health and Safety, is here this evening, and I'm going to ask him to respond to the trustee's question. Thank you.
Welcome, Matthew.
The policies relate to staff
but student privacy is considered under the Health and Safety Act as well. So information that doesn't need to be disclosed about students is not. The focus is on the injury to staff, and there are policies and procedures that address how we protect both staff and students.
Okay. Thank you. Follow-up question, Student Trustee Jail.
Okay, thanks. Just to follow up, should we be putting some language about the students in this policy, or is that not appropriate because it's a staff policy inherently?
Thank you very much. So just follow up on that, Superintendent Nunn.
Matthew, if I may.
Matthew?
We have separate policies that deal with student behavior. So it's not that one policy ignores the other. They work in tandem to cover the entire scenario.
So yes, so there would be separate policies, but overlap for sure. Thank you for the questions, and those are definitely important. Further questions to the policy report? Seeing none, I just have one quick question or clarification on the report, and I'll look maybe to the chair of the committee. And I guess I would Peter Silverman, but he's not present this evening. But perhaps to Trustee Bingham, on item C, staff progressive discipline, we did have a bit of a discussion regarding a directive, and in the report it mentions that staff may consider a directive, or rather, not directive, procedure. My understanding was that staff will. Okay, so it is, so in the report it's there in the, in the attachment it is. Okay, so I just want to make sure in terms of the report and the tracking sheets that there will be a follow-up with the directive? Okay, or procedure, I'm sorry. Superintendent Silverman would be very upset with me. But yes, okay, thank you for entertaining that. I just wanted to clarify so it's in the report. Any further questions? One further question, yes, Trustee Danko, please, go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair, for 8E-1 medical health supports, it just indicates under guiding principles that services and supports, hang on, that's not the right one. Where did it go? That there would be designation of roles and responsibilities for medical health support services in schools, and that may mean the provision of assistance by school board personnel. So if we have a student with a condition, do we require staff to have specific training to deal with an anaphylaxis reaction, to deal with a heart attack, to deal with, I know we have first aid training. None of that is indicated in this in terms of how we would be able to support students in schools and share that provision of service.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
So thank you through the chair. I'll begin, then I'll pass it to Matthew Kwan or Peggy Blair, who can provide some insights. But we have many procedures that you can see, as Trustee Danko has mentioned, even students with anaphylaxis reactions. So there are action plans required, and as legislation comes, we're required to put new procedures that you can see. But I'll ask Matthew if he could provide more insight, if it doesn't say it in the policy, to answer the trustee's question around our expectation around the action plans for students.
Thank you, Matthew.
The procedure would look at, and whether it's explicit or not, developing plans to support the student in the circumstance. So a lot of times, students will have different needs, different limitations, and the board's responsibility would make sure that we go through the accommodation process for those specific needs.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Danko.
Thanks, and just for some further clarification. So if a student, for example, I'm going to make one up, had a feeding tube that could become compromised during the school day, would we then engage a staff member to train specifically to help deal with that or to be able to flesh it out? Or what would the plan look like? Or if you had someone with a heart condition, would we ensure there's someone trained in CPR in the school at all times? So I'm just looking for a little more clarity on what we would require staff to do.
And those are good questions. And I know we had some of this discussion at the committee as well. So back to Matthew. Matthew?
Sure. It would depend on the documentation provided. So we take a lot of our guidance from doctors. They help us identify what the actual needs are. And then we go through the process of determining how to best support that student. So if we need additional training, then we would seek out additional training. If we need a partner organization to help us, then that's what we would do as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Danko. Any further questions on any items in the policy report? Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. Trustee Archer?
Favor.
Thank you very much. Moving to item 9, Finance and Facilities. Trustee Van Geffen will begin first with the May 9th report.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to present the committee report from May the 9th. This is quite a lengthy report, so I will do my best to work through it. We have 3 action items here and then also some fairly substantial monitoring items that we received at the meeting. The first action item is a Summit Park school boundary review. Trustees will know with the new school being built, the recommendation from the committee was that the attached boundary for the JK to 8 boundary for the new school in the Summit Park neighborhood be approved for the 2019-20 school year. Trustees can reference the map attached, and with that, the work done by the committee to the committee report. Item B on here is the long-term facility master plan guiding principles. So much in line with the discussion in regards to the accommodation review schedule that had come forward to this committee as well to board. Staff, and very much appreciated, brought forward these guiding principles. And so the question might come forward, well, why are we looking at the guiding principles for this document? And if you take a look at, in some previous reports, if you take a look at the guiding principles that we worked through before, they were getting to be quite dated. They were referenced to documents that were, and I think in some cases, getting close to a decade beyond. So nothing overly changes throughout, but I do quickly want to go through these guiding principles. These are important. This document as a whole is important. So as we look at the guiding principles, the very first one here was, previously it was referred to a 2011-12 operating plan. Now it aligns with our renewal strategic direction. Item 2 on the utilization rates, that stays relatively the same in the 90 to 110%. Item 3 in here is just simply better alignment to our program strategies. Item 4 in here, previously it was referencing the 2013 transportation policy. You'll notice that we're not dating ourselves as we go through in these guiding principles. Item 5, it referred to a 2011 document. It's more aligned with where we are right now. Item 6 to a 99 policy. Item 7, relatively the same, I believe. Now, item 8, that does get into some of the specifics, especially as we move into accommodation reviews. What's interesting to note is that the committee felt that given some of the experiences that we've gone through in this board in our accommodation reviews and the great outcomes and cases that we've pitched to the province, the Ancaster accommodation review comes to mind. Given the size, the committee members thought that we should lower the school capacity in elementary schools from 500 down to what you see here as 450, that more aligned with some of the recommendations that we had put forward. Something else that came to mind when you look at the secondary end, we increased the school capacity from 1250 up to 1300, or sorry, 1350. So I'll leave it at that. The long and the short of it is that the committee, we kicked this around quite a bit, actually through a couple meetings. A lot of discussion went on, especially while we've got a very important discussion of budget going on at the same time. But we were able to land this, and then you will see this embedded within the monitoring item D. Before I get to D, item C, so as I said, we continue to go through our budget discussions today, actually in a special finance and facilities meeting prior to board, moved at the committee level the capital and operating budget for our coming school year. We will see that as a board in a coming board meeting. what you see in C is an update that came from staff with regards to a small surplus and some recommended additions, specifically with a human rights officer, additional transitional EAs. You see a motion that came forward from Trustee White to the committee that a position for a human rights and equity advisor be created with a maximum budget of $150,000, and that a community advisory committee be created for the 2018-19 school year that will provide advice on human rights and equity matters. The committee discussed this at length. We felt as a committee that this was timely and that it aligned with the direction and the values of this board, and that this advisory committee, when it is created, complements this position nicely. So much appreciated direction here, having the direction come forward and moved unanimously within the committee. 2 monitoring items that trustees will see. So given the accommodation review schedule, given the guiding principles that you see that we moved at the committee level, embedded within the long-term facilities master plan, this document has been overhauled quite a bit, and much appreciation to staff, specifically Ian Hopkins with planning and the work that he has done. This document will be presented to the city. It is a document that is better referenced electronically, simply because it has so many supplementary documents attached to it in terms of the elementary and secondary design manuals, our capital plan, which is something that that is embedded throughout this entire document. There's a pretty interesting read with regards to the maintenance plan, with regards to our conservation and demand management plans. So all of that, it's amazing that we actually got through this meeting, but we did. And a great update. There is a monitoring update on where that plan stands. And after that, we had our annual school renewal report, one of our 5 strategic directions. That report came forward and was accepted from received by the committee. And with that, through you, Mr. Chair, I will move the report.
Thank you, Trustee Van Geffen. And certainly it was a busy meeting. Seconder for the report. Trustee Bingham, thank you. Questions or comments? We'll begin, Trustee Pattison.
Thank you, Chair White. Just a couple of things. So under the guiding principles under item B, just looking at number 6, it says identify, remove, and present barriers to people. I'm just trying to, is the wording okay there, or am I missing something?
Thank you. So can you just, which guiding principle is that? 6 you'd said, thank you. Looking to, do you want to take a stab at it? Greg first? Greg?
You know what? I can take a stab at it, but I not seeing Super Associate Director Sovereign here. I believe that was one that first came forward, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong here, but first came forward to the committee, was sent back to staff for further wordsmithing. But given what you see there, the committee felt that that aligned. That aligned with the direction of the board, and that's what was moved.
Thank you. So I think the difficulty, and correct me, Trustee Pattison, the word present, I think is throwing you off. Superintendent Associate Director Zucker, does that ring a bell purposefully, or is that oversight?
That's correct, and I'm looking at it and I can see the confusion. So I think we could just remove that and say identify and remove barriers to people with disabilities. I'm not sure what the present actually means.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we were going. We had edited this so many times that I think there's some wording that kind of carried over between different versions. So I think that's a good catch, because we're not going to remove barriers and then re-present them.
Sure, sorry.
Although, luckily, Greg's explanation allowed us the time to figure out what that meant. So thank you for the long explanation, Greg. Further questions?
Yeah, and then on item C,
Sorry, prevent. Prevent. Remove. And that's a very proactive word, prevent. In this case, it's spelled check who we get to blame. Prevent it is. Trustee Pattison.
thank you for that clarification. So under item C then, it says that staff is recommending additions to the budget for Human Rights Equity Officer, additional transitional EAs and additional funding to provide direct support for students with complex needs. And then your motion, Chair White mentions a position for Human Rights and Equity Advisor with a maximum 150,000, and the Community Advisor Committee. But does this mean that we're not going to get transitional EAs or this other direct supports?
I see. So it's a bit all encompassing. So some of that was an additional topic in addition. But Mr. Director, do you want to explain those numbers?
Yes, through the chair. So thank you, Trustee Pattison, for the question. Through the Equity Secretariat from the Ministry, all school boards will be receiving funding for a Human Rights/Equity Officer. Some boards are receiving that. The pilot board's receiving it right away. We will be receiving it January 2019. But as a board, the motion to the chair has put forward, but also as staff, we had been looking, instead of waiting mid-year to implement a position, and based on some of the growth and areas of focus, we thought it would be valuable that we begin this process. The question then becomes, how do we fund such a position? Well, we look at where we can find funding currently that we have when we deal with potential costs, where we do engage in legal costs, that those costs can be redirected in a proactive way to a Human Rights/Equity Officer. And then when the funding does come, which will come in January 2019, it will be directed for this position.
And I think, Trustee Pattison, your question, though, focuses mainly on that last sentence that reads additional transitional EAs and additional funding to provide direct support for students with complex needs. So that's, I think, the confusion as well. Associate Director?
So thank you, and through the chair, there was $500,000 total that we presented that day. 150 of it would be going towards the Human Rights Equity Officer, 150 to transitional EAs, and then that left $200,000 for additional support for students with complex needs. So usually we just present that information, and then when it comes forward as the entire budget, it all gets approved, and that's what happened this evening. At the time, the committee thought that it was important to pull out the Human Rights Advisor and bring that forward as an action item on that particular day. So that was why it's separated out. It doesn't indicate that we're not going to do the others. They came forward through Finance and Facilities today and were actually passed today.
Thank you. Trustee Pattison?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
And I think a portion of the reason why the committee felt that they wanted to expedite the human rights portion was so staff can begin working on the job description, get the posting, and not have to wait another 2 weeks or whatnot until the final board meeting. So thank you, Trustee Pattison. Next on the list, Trustee Danko.
Thank you. And through the chair, for item B, under the long-term facilities master plan guiding principles, I appreciate the adjustment to the optimal school size. Just a question about the school site size for elementary. We do have I think it's almost the same as it always has been. The optimal size is approximately 6 acres. But given that we have a great variety in the size of elementary schools, some are 900, some are 250, do we just use that approximately to factor in the planned school size? If we were planning a new school, I would hope that we would potentially look for greater acreage for a site.
Yes, good question. Chair of the committee, Trustee Van Geffen.
So the school site size on both ends, not only the elementary but the secondary as well, got tossed around quite a bit, and that actually became where you see the note of that the principles are intended to be guides, and that local parameters may influence the thresholds above, specifically to do with item A. That was the basis on why to add that note.
Trustee Dinkum?
Thank you. And through the chair, for, again, item B8, is it 8D, for dual track schools for French immersion and English, how do we land the threshold 60%?
Thank you. Mr. Director.
Through the chair, when we brought forward the elementary program strategy, the French immersion strategy was part of that. And when we brought forward a threshold of around 60, 40, 40, 60 as the range of where we try to find that balance. And that was, I think, brought forward about a year and a half ago, if I'm not mistaken. In the past, we've talked about 50-50, but the challenge of being 50-50, so 60-40, we believe that there's healthy population for English track and French immersion track.
Trustee Danko?
Thank you. And on item D, which I recognize as a monitoring item, I guess, had a few notes or feedback, possibly questions. The one piece in the long-term facilities master plan that is a bit challenging is the section 1.2, which I know you don't have in front of you, enrollment and capacity trends. And I appreciate that staff have outlined that retention rate methodology is common practice in Ontario school boards, and they've talked about the different things that are considered in making projections. But should we also capture the limitations of doing any kind of prediction? And the reason I bring that up is because when we look at, I hope everybody took the time to look at their enrollment versus capacity numbers. I was really surprised to see the schools in the Central Mountain that have already gone through an accommodation review have already had additions, renovations. So we've landed what we thought just 4 years ago was the correct capacity. And we have schools projecting 10 years out to be 134% over capacity, 127%, 119% for another 2 schools. That's a bit shocking to me, and it's completely different than the enrollment projections that were done 4 years ago. In fact, I went back a year. Even last year at the same time, our enrollment projections were at 106%, 115%. So they were much more reasonable. So obviously there are things that we cannot predict for. We can't predict when cycles of renewal are going to happen in a neighborhood. We can't predict what the housing market's going to do. So it would be really helpful to be transparent and indicate that there are limitations and that predictions have to be updated regularly because there are things that we can't predict. I think that would make this report or this document transparent. I think it would potentially give us more credibility in the eyes of the community because it is concerning when these are the numbers that they talk about in our accommodation reviews. So if that could be added, I think that would be of benefit. I'm not sure how you'd phrase it. You probably have to check with legal on that.
I think that makes a little too much sense. Identifying limitations in any type of theory or methodology, usually a good idea. Associate Director?
Sorry, thank you. And through the chair, we will take that into account and we will create something to add to the long-term facilities master plan. Thank you.
Go ahead.
And if you're timing me, I'm sure I'm getting out of time. But just 2 other quick things. They talk about the on-the-ground capacity and how it's calculated and identify that there's a ministry database. I was wondering if there's the ability to provide a link to that database so that if people wanted more information to understand what rooms are loaded, which ones are not loaded, they could look it up. I think it makes us more transparent so that we're not necessarily just providing the on-the-ground capacity without someone being able to check it.
And I think we have a one-pager on that, whether we link it or put it to our own site. We can do that. That always changes too, so yeah. Okay, good. And that's it. Thank you, Trustee Danko, very helpful. Further questions? I have Student Trustee High.
So under item C, your motion, Trustee White, the part B of that the Community Advisory Committee be created for the 2018-19 school year, was criteria for membership on this committee discussed at all during the meeting?
So if I can, through Chair of the Committee, Van Geffen, I'll take a stab at that. Yes, mildly, but not in depth at this point. So the logic behind adding a community advisory committee paired with the human rights officer would allow them to work hand in hand and help develop the position and also the audience. So in this case, to protect and ensure that the position actually provides a benefit to parents, students, community, not just for board officials, so to speak. So in that's the purpose of the Community Advisory Committee. In terms of the makeup, Traditionally, our advisory committees are left to staff to operationalize. So it's not necessarily a trustee decision, although we do approve the final membership. But I think the intent in this case is to create a cross-section of community members. So maybe some of that doesn't have children in our system. It could be a combination of parents. It could be a combination of students, as well as different human rights characteristics. So for instance, a big portion of human rights is disabilities, who could fall under a category special education. So I imagine there's going to be some crossover with SEAC, Special Education Advisory Committee. So they're going to want that entire cross-section. But I think at the end of the day, we know what our needs are as a system for the most part. It's really the advisory committee, being a community advisory committee, would really be geared to parents, students, community members. But right now, it's all food for thought. So if you have any input, or if anyone has any input, now is a perfect time to suggest to staff those thoughts, and as staff operationalize it, it might, make that process easier. So do you have any suggestions? You do? Yeah, so if you want to take them offline, yeah, and I think that would be helpful because we have all of that wiggle room right now. And it is mentioned in here as well that it is limited to a 1-year advisory committee. If there's interest, it could continue, but the focus is to work alongside that first year with the human rights officer. Thanks for the question. Further questions? Student trustee Jill.
Thank you. This question's about part A of that action item, so the actual position of the Human Rights and Equity Advisor. I'm wondering how, if we even know this, how they would be hired, whether it would be from the board or externally, and just, I guess that's kind of also, you answered it earlier about it's being formed by the advisory group too, but I'm wondering if we have any ideas on the preliminary part of that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'll go to the director.
So thank you for the question. The Equity Secretariat from the ministry has already worked with pilot boards, and we are engaging in teleconference with them because there are other boards like us who are going to move forward before the funding comes fully. So they provide us a basic job description and some of their advice, pros and cons, because they've gone through the pilot boards. So we engaged through that, and they've given us a draft job posting for us to consider. Then, like every posting, our human resource department then supports us by advertising the position with the right qualifications, and then staff will engage in that process. So right now, we have a draft posting, and we have HR reviewing it with Mercer just to make sure in terms of the criteria for a position, so we're consistent. And the Equity Secretariat is actually guiding us through Patrick Case very closely and supporting us through this process.
Thank you. And I think in general as well, the qualifications are very specific to that field of work. Not necessarily a current educator in the system. It would be someone with a very strong background and skill set in that area to assist, which we don't have on staff, so to speak. We have various educators in those positions, but this would take it one step further. Further questions, comments? All in favor of the A report, 9A? Greg, are you supporting your own motion? Thank you. Kathy?
In favor.
Thank you very much. That is unanimous. Trustee Van Geffen, 9B, May 16th report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trustees will see before them the committee report from our Finance and Facilities meeting on May the 16th. One action item. So this is our annual rental report and rate update. Trustees will recall, given many of the discussions in the past, this is the second year of our implementation of aligning our rental rates with our costs. As a board, in the past, we have far exceeded our grants. We still exceed the grants for the community use of schools and the priority school initiative. We still exceed those grants by in the area of $250,000. But with that, trustees received this report, a good report, noting as well that on April the 30th as a board, we also received a report on the community use of fields and rental rates. We approved that here as a board. Next year, for the new board, when this annual report comes forward, it will include the field rates that we approved here as part of this report. The committee members did request some additional information to be brought back with respect to rental revenue and other comparisons. This report was moved with minor changes. The three recommendations underneath that this will commence in the 2019, that's supposed to be 2020 school year, and that the rental department will implement an annual increase to the rental rates that is tied to the annual rate of inflation. Item 2, that the rental rate increase for the 2018 school year will be 3%. And number 3, that every 5 years, a full review of the rates occurs to ensure that the rate remains at a cost recovery basis, and the first review is scheduled for 2022. That is the action item. 2 monitoring items, budget, getting us in preparation of the presentation that we saw today to the committee. So an opportunity for trustees to add any input before staff brought forward the final capital and operating budget. And item C was also a enrollment summary and a good news piece brought forward with regards to our enrollment. I believe for the first time in a long time, increases on both the secondary and the elementary end. This is revised, so this is increases based on what was projected before, but as we saw today at our budget discussions, we are seeing increases in both our elementary and secondary ends. So with that, and through you, Mr. Chair, I will move the report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Van Geffen. More great work from the committee. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Hicks, thank you. Questions, comments? Trustee Hicks, do you have a question? Trustee Johnstone?
Thank you. Through the chair, I have 2 questions with regards to our rental report. My first question is, how do our rental rates compare to the Hamilton Wentworth Catholic District School Board? And my second question is, since we've began increasing our rates, have we experienced any declines in rental rates? Has it stabilized, or have we had increases? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Associate Director Zucker.
Thank you, and through the chair, when we do establish the rates, we do look at comparable rates, including the coterminous board and also the city. So they are in line. I think ours are a little bit higher, but again, it's based on a cost recovery basis. So we look at our costs, compare them, but then we also make sure that our rates are similar to that of our I'm going to use the word competitors, but people who rent the same space. So yes, they are comparable. And when it comes to the number, are you asking about the number of rentals or about the actual dollar value of the rentals that we have? So I can take it away to give you exact numbers, but I will say that our weekend rentals have gone down, and that is because we are actually charging for the custodial costs associated with them. And people are renting smarter. And in that, I say they're renting only the space that they need, because at the time of our previous rates, you could book for the whole year in advance, and we had a lot of no-shows. And so so the numbers for sure have gone down, but I don't know necessarily if the usage has gone down, and that when it's booked, it's actually being used as opposed to booked and nobody's showing up.
Thank you. Follow up, Trustee Johnstone.
Thank you for that. I think that that would be curious information to find out if our overall usage rates have maintained, but the days that groups are choosing to rent our space have changed. And just one follow-up, because you mentioned that our rates are slightly higher. Are we talking about $10 difference, a $50 difference? I'm just curious to know what how comparable we are.
Thank you. Associate Director?
So I would have to take that away to get you an exact number. I'm sorry, I don't have it, unless Dave, you know the numbers, or Denise?
So I can just add through the chair that the Catholic Board has been phasing in their rates, so we're not at the same place in time specifically. Our rates are comparable. If you look at a single gym or a double gym, our rates are within dollars of their rates. So it's not like one is significantly higher than the other.
Thank you for that, and thank you for this report.
Thank you. Mr. Director, you have something to add?
I just want to add, since the rates have gone up in terms of cost recovery, yes, I have many conversations with some partners who ask at times why. And I think what people didn't realize is how much the board had been subsidizing over the years or spending beyond our subsidy. And what we did notice is that certain partners are renting more strategically instead of blindly. And, so a lot more conversations educating the people because our rates were so low for so long, and this board had decided not to subsidize based on what we were funded by the ministry. So it is challenging, it is change, but I know I continue to have those conversations with people trying to understand the why behind it. Once they understand the why, then they have to make informed choices about that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Trustee Beatty.
Thank you. And through the chair, the committee report does make note of a request for additional information. That was something that I had asked for at the meeting, and I think some of the information that I was requesting is very similar to what Trustee Johnstone is looking for. I'm wondering if staff can provide an update now. We're nearly 2 weeks after the meeting. Is there any update on a time that we can expect to have this information come back to committee?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm not sure if we had set a time or an expectation on that, whether it was June 6th or later. Do you recall, Chair Van Geffen? No, I don't think. Associate Director Zucker or
So
Officer Anderson?
We do have information available now with regards to dollars, and Dave can share it if that's appropriate right now.
Thank you. And then just is this from this meeting, or is this the follow-up meeting to this? This was all contained in this item, right?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just trying to keep my dates straight. Officer Dave.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, so we went away and looked at our understanding of the question was the rental revenue, the caretaking costs, and then the net revenue. So we pulled data from 14-15, 15-16, 16-17, and then 17-18 cost at the end of April. So I'll just provide perhaps the net revenue after caretaking costs were provided. So in 14-15, we had a net revenue of approximately $276,000. In 15-16, we had a net revenue of approximately $555,000. In 16-17, we had approximately $930,000. And then 17-18, again, cost at the end of April, $743,000.
Thank you. Trustee Beatty.
With respect, I was hoping to get in some kind of format that I could examine it and digest it, and I'm sure that would be useful.
And I think in fairness, that's coming to the next meeting on June 6th. But I think the question was if we had something to share now, if staff could. So I think that's as good as Dave could do in this moment in time, which is better than I thought. So good job, Dave. But I think the plan would be June 6th. Do I have nods? Yes.
I'd be interested in seeing that in a hard copy. I was having trouble keeping track of all the numbers that we're going through.
You just see numbers. That's all you guys.
Yeah.
In no particular order. Thank you, Trustee Beatty, and staff will follow up June 6th. Further questions? I had Trustee Danko and then Trustee Hicks. Trustee Danko.
Thank you, through the chair. I guess just to follow on the question that came forward, if we were talking about net revenue, when it does come back to the committee, can we just capture, that's net revenue after caretaking costs, but what about after the maintenance costs that we know we have to feed back into the schools, because it makes it sound like we're making a lot of money there. But the question I had was around the subsidies. I thought we'd, and I'm trying to remember back, decided to just allocate the subsidy money. We used to spend quite a bit more than that. And so we're still spending $278,000 more than we're receiving from the ministry. So is that just based on, we sort of estimate what the rentals are going to be through the year? How does that process work for allocating those subsidies? And do we have a plan for minimizing how much we go over?
Yes, thank you. And just in terms of motions on the books, the motion is that we want to get to a cost recovery basis with no incurred cost ourselves. But as we work toward that, we kind of had to see how everything fell. So to your question, how did it all fall and why and everything else? Associate Director Zucker.
Through the chair. So just one clarification, we're not losing money per se. It's not money budget that we're actually spending that we're not getting back. We're not recovering the costs that are associated with the utilities that are used at that time and the costs of running the building at the time. If there's a true outlay like the caretaking costs, then those are being fully recovered now. So that was a big change. We were using the subsidy by over $1.5 million. And at that time, when we looked at how we were using the subsidy, we put a plan in place that we thought would bring that subsidy as close to zero as we could. Through implementing that plan, we are obviously getting closer, and we tweak it every year to get it even closer, and hence the recommendations that you see coming forward, because even though we were getting closer with the subsidy part, the costs continue to increase. So that's why now we need to look at increases and looking at inflationary costs and that sort of thing. So yes, the plan is to get it to zero. We're very happy with how close we've gotten in 3 years, and you should see that number continue to decrease.
Thank you. Further questions? Trustee Hicks?
The information that's being sent back to the committee, and the rental revenues are important, but I want to clarify, my concern was a number of rental comparisons. In other words, what we need to know is how many gyms versus half gyms and playing fields and that, have they decreased or increased since that we've increased the rates? So that's, from my perspective, that's very important.
Associate Director?
So we that information back, but I will tell you that right now we still have more requests for gym space than we actually have available. So it's not, it hasn't decreased it to the point, or it hasn't caused the usage to decrease to the point where it's not affordable for people to use it.
Thank you.
On weekdays. Thank you, Trustee Hicks. Clarification, Trustee Beatty, on information.
Thank you. Clarification question, or a question of process. If item A was to be deferred to the next meeting, what kind of impact would that have on timelines in implementing the new rental rates? And I ask from the perspective of, we have new information that's going to be brought forward, which may be formative in the final decision-making process that's not going to see the day of light until June 6th. What would the impact be on delaying this decision-making until we see that new information?
Thank you. Mr. Director?
So through the chair. So the impact is always around our ability to communicate proactively to our partners if there's going to be rental rates. If it's delayed, we're going to communicate later, but my desire is for our staff to be able to communicate changes soon, so then people can make informed decisions as our partners are planning. If it's delayed, then we will communicate mid-June versus starting tomorrow. So that would be the impact on communication to our partners.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Trustee Beatty?
At the appropriate time, I'd like to ask that number A be voted on separately, and I'd actually like to make a deferral motion on it or send it back to committee, whatever works in terms of process, so that the full information can be brought back and discussed so that we can make a more informed choice.
Thank you. So we'll take some further questions and we'll come back to that. Any further questions? didn't have anyone else on the list, so maybe now's the appropriate time. So let's, well, in terms of voting separately, I guess there's the monitoring report. So if we want to separate the monitoring reports to receive, we have a mover seconder already on the books. So motion to receive items B and C. All in favor? That's unanimous. Kathy?
Favor.
Thank you. So we're remaining with A only. It's already been moved and seconded. So right now it's on the floor. So the motion is on the floor. You can make a referral motion or we can vote on it. What is your preference, Trustee Beatty?
I'd like to make a motion to refer back to F&F for the upcoming June 6th meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Pattison. Thank you. So the motion on the floor is to refer back. Do you have anything to add to that motion, Trustee Beatty?
Simply, again, that I think that there is important information coming forward that may or may not have a direct impact on the final decision, but I think it's important for all trustees to have that information before them, and knowing that it has been collected and will be presented, I think we'd all be in a more informed position if we were to delay this for really just a week or so to make a more informed choice.
Thank you very much. Discussion? Trustee Pattison?
I'll just add that in listening to the conversation and talks of other information coming after approving this motion, that I was questioning also why we were going to approve something that we're going to receive more information on next week. So I thank you to Trustee Beatty for bringing forward this motion.
Thank you. Further discussion, Trustee Van Geffen?
More, I guess, of a comment to how this progressed at the committee and moving forward, should this be the direction that trustees want. Understanding that the piece of communicating this to the community at large, I think is timely to start getting this out. This was approved at the committee level under the understanding that additional information could be brought back as information, but this was moved unanimously at the committee level. If that's not the will of the board right now, so be it. I haven't heard anything differently from this discussion in terms of the requested information that, to me, of the 3 action items here, are going to change the 3 action items. So if trustees actually look at these 3 items and think that they could change, then by all means send this back to committee. But in terms of that piece of communicating to the community at large, my recommendation would be to move what we have here and still receive for information this additional information if we want to change direction at that time. I just don't envision, given based on the discussion, that it's going to. Should this move and it go back to committee, then my recommendation would be to the individuals that want to see this back at the committee and then come back. Please go above and beyond in terms of making your points very clear in terms of what you want to see in the additional information so that everything is satisfied when it comes back to the committee and with that back to board.
Thank you very much, Trustee Van Geffen. Further comments, discussion? And then to staff, just for clarity, Mr. Director, timing-wise, I'm not sure, I think we asked that question. If I could ask it again, just to clarify when we usually communicate this to partners, and if 2 weeks or whatever is a significant delay or something that staff can operationalize.
Well, I'll ask Dave Anderson can step in, but typically beginning of June, we like to communicate to our renters if there's going to be any rate changes so they can plan. So if it's delayed, it won't come till June 18th board meeting, and we're a little concerned that that's a little late in the year for some of our community partners to plan. So we typically like June 1st to communicate any changes, and that's in the spirit of transparent communication and effective communication timely. That would be our hope and goal.
Okay, so June 1st is the optimal communication date, and that's online or whatever. I guess I'm speaking myself as a trustee, so just a follow-up question. When do rentals open for bookings the following year. So obviously, everyone waits for the new rental rates, and then when does the system allow folks in to book?
I'll ask Dave Anderson if he's aware of when the system is open for people to begin planning, but I know we already get calls for people looking already for September so they can start their programming. So it's active, I believe, but I don't know if there's a official opening date where they can apply or if that's already active.
So through the chair, July is the busy period for the rentals group, and by mid-July, most of the September rentals have been approved.
Sorry, so just clarity, what's the opening date when the system goes live for rentals? I'm not sure if I missed that, I apologize.
Sorry, through the chair, I want to say July 1st, but I'd have to verify that.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, with the information, I would maybe pose to trustees the question, when you look at A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3 of the motion, the one that is what I'm hearing from staff, time sensitive, would be 2. And that's the increase of 3%. Renters are less concerned about 1 and 3 at this time of the year, as they are the 3% raise come next year's rental, which what I'm hearing should be communicated June 1st and go live July 1st. So I'm just throwing that out there, looking for nods to see if I have that correct. And I'm look to the associate director or director.
I apologize. We were looking at something online around rates. And we were looking at the research. Can you ask the question again, please?
So just to reframe the question, the motion has 3 parts, 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
The time-sensitive portion, according to staff, is number 2, because that actually has an influence on what happens this coming September.
Correct.
Both 1 and 3 could be debated and considered by the committee without a time-sensitive element. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be correct. In terms of time sensitive, that's correct in terms for September.
So I just throw out there hypothetically to trustees, and I'm doing this as an individual trustee who has the floor. Perhaps we consider the 3% raise so rentals can proceed as planned, and then we can go back and look at the multi-year plan in terms of a 5-year review and ongoing coordination or whatnot to inflation. So I'll throw that out there. So I mean, I guess I'm speaking against the referral motion, at least one portion of the 3 elements of the motion. So I would be in favor. So I would, as it stands right now, vote against the referral. If it was reframed, I would support portion 2 and then refer 1 and 3 back to the committee. Further speakers? Trustee Van Geffen?
Through the chair, so I would ask, from a governance perspective, would this be the appropriate time to move an amendment that 2 be removed from the moved motion, from the recommendation that was put forward?
Yeah. So I don't think you can amend a referral because it's not a amendable motion, I don't think. Nor would it fit the spirit of the referral. So my suggestion would be it would either have to be withdrawn or a friendly amendment kind of reframed, or we'd have to vote on it. If it loses, then it could be reintroduced. If not, then it would obviously go back as the referral would suggest. So the quick answer, no. Trustee Hicks.
Because the committee voted unanimously for what's on the paper, I would vote on the amendment if it's defeated.
Okay, so right now there is no amendment, so it's a referral, and right now the referral is for all elements 1, 2, and 3 to go back to the committee June 11th, approved by board June 18th. That is the motion. June 6th, back to board June 18th. Trustee Danko.
Thank you. And through the chair, could I just clarify the intent of the motion? Is the question whether or not the 3% for the next school year appropriate, and the additional information might feed into that? I thought I heard from staff when they answered my question that 3% increase for next year was to tweak our approach or process further to get us down to a true cost recovery so that we are not exceeding the grant from the ministry. So if I could just clarify, one, if the 3% is meant to address the overage that we were at this year, and maybe clarify with the mover if that 3% was the key point in question.
Thank you. So I have two questions. First to staff regarding why 3%, and is that meant to correct the deficit or lack of recovery? Associate Director.
Thank you, and through the chair. So the 3% is meant to take into, because it is based on cost recovery, so costs will increase on an annual basis as utilities increase, as caretaking cost, whatever, all of the costs associated with the building are increased. So yes, it's meant to cover those costs, because if we don't increase it, then that gap will continue to grow, and therefore the subsidy usage will continue to grow.
Thank you. Okay, so yes, I think the answer is yes, it's meant to cover the increase. And then the second question was to the mover, and that is, do you want to repeat the question around, is number 2 or is the 3% the...
I'm just looking for clarity on the additional information that's coming back. What would that inform?
Thank you. Trustee Beatty.
Thank you. And through the chair, the intent of the information was to determine what the impact of recent changes to our rental rates have had on, number 1, usage, and number 2, revenues. And I think that it could play an impact on the percentage, the increase that we may decide upon. It may not have any impact, but I think it possibly could. There is anecdotal evidence from community user groups who suggest that we have really made some radical changes when it comes to rental rate changes. And I think that getting information back that supports how that impact has played out in real time would be useful in determining if this is something that we should move ahead with, or if we should make refinements.
Thank you. Trustee Danko?
Thank you for that clarification. So I believe you already mentioned that we have a prior motion on the books that the intent of school rentals is to be at full cost recovery. So if staff is recommending this, pardon me, to achieve that, then I'm going to vote against the referral.
Thank you. Actually, I think it's embedded in the policy, to be exact. Thank you for that. Further speakers? Trustee Mulholland.
Through the chair, I'm looking at number 2, special, the rental rates. And we talk about fairness, community groups. We keep talking about in-house gyms. I like to ask questions about the outhouse, the fields. Where could this be fair when one could rent, and I'll through the chair to Dave, what would, if I wanted to rent Church or Glendale on a Saturday morning to play, I'm a community group, I'm going to play soccer or field hockey, whatever, what would I be charged according to this per hour?
Yep. Dave or Stacy? I'm not sure if either of you have the chart handy or if you need a minute.
So through the chair, our fields, if it's a field that hasn't gone through the revitalization yet, it would be in the $4.25 range, $4.25 range, or $7.50 range. I don't have the chart in front of me, plus the cost of the permit.
Would it be $7.50 an hour? I think that's what I was. Yeah.
I think it's $4.25 or $4.50.
Well, let's assume $7.50 an hour if I want to rent Glendale for a couple hundred children to play flag football or something. And the rate would go up 3%. Seems fair. You know, next year I want to. If I want to rent Churchill, how much do I rent the same day, the same program per hour? It's $100 an hour. We know that. So it's $100 an hour. So now I have to choose between Glendale and Churchill. I could pay $7.50 an hour, or I could pay $100 an hour. that's okay, the fairness probably, but to increase 3% next year on $100 an hour, when in fact Churchill is contracted out for 5 years, there is no cost for update. There's no caretaking. There is no cost. So why would you charge me 3% on my $100 an hour when there is no increase? I mean, that has to be stated in here. It's not a blanket policy here. Everything is not on the same page. So we got to be very careful with rental. I've gone through this for 20 years, renting Sir Johnny McDowell Delta. It's a nightmare for Dave and for these people. But we as a board have to make sure they know that if somebody rents a facility like Churchill for $100 an hour, we're not going to increase their rate because there is no increase in. They have to know that. Dave has to know that's what we want him to direct. So, is that part of your review that I would support it? If not, I'm not supporting it.
Trustee Beatty.
So as part of the information that we're seeking back through the chair would be a breakdown of rentals prior to the increase in rates versus the rentals, information regarding the rentals after the increase in rates that we did last year. And that's a breakdown of total number of permits issued. That's also a breakdown of what costs associated with those rentals were, what's the terminology, the wear and tear on our facilities, those costs, and also the revenue that was created. The comparison between the two scenarios before the increase and after the increase. That was the information that I was hoping to get back, and I think that it's important to see what impact the changes we've already made have had on usage of our facilities in the community. That's what I'm seeking.
Thank you. Trustee Mulholland?
On that, through the chair then, there was no artificial turf last year. So there's no, we don't know how much it cost last year. But I would recommend that, see how much it charged a separate school, Bishop Ryan or whatever, what was their rate for their artificial turf, 2017, per hour on a Saturday, and they might give Dave or someone what you're trying to do. But we can't assume there's an increase because there was no cost last year. There was no field. So,
thank you for that, Trustee Mulholland. Okay, we've had a reasonably thorough debate. Just one question, if I may, just had to ask a clarification question, because I'm just trying to get clarity on staff's original intent. The whole idea is that this is cost recovery. So the goal is not based on usage, it's based on what we project the wear and tear is, and we want to recover that at 100%. So the whole idea of locking it to inflation is that your maintenance costs move with inflation. Therefore, it's not about it's $100 for a gym. It's about what is it. Our thinking is what is the maintenance to me to keep that gym up and running, the lights on, caretaker in the building if applicable, obviously not on a weekday, et cetera. So I think what we're trying to do is get that number as close to zero as possible in terms of cost recovery, and then from there lock it to inflation so we really don't have to play with this anymore. I think that's the intent, Mr. Associate Madam Director.
Thank you, and through the chair, yes, that is the intent because that's based on the policy, right? The policy says cost recovery, so staff is implementing the policy.
Okay. Okay. So we've done this thoroughly. Any other questions? I'll just ask. I think we've all made a debate, but questions for clarification. Trustee Johnstone.
I guess just a comment to my fellow trustees through the chair. So I think I can support point 2, which is to move forward with 3% increase. Looking at the numbers, it looks like for our highest cost and our highest category, commercial, it would be less than a $3 raise. It'd be $2.70, I believe. And for our lowest, it looks like it's 45 cents on our lowest category, which is youth, nonprofit youth. So I don't have a significant concern with that. Where I would have a concern is waiting 5 years to do a review. I am interested to know, while I'm mindful of that we have set a direction in terms of having full cost recovery, I think it's also important as trustees that we understand what the impact is. Because at some point, you will have, as rates continue to go up, I would assume at some point that fewer people would begin to rent. It would at some point become too expensive. So at what point are we losing money versus staying the same versus increasing? So while I think, I can support moving forward tonight so that we can get the rates out for our user groups, which I think is really important. We do not want to be responsible for delaying activities beginning. At the same time, I do think we need to do a more fulsome review and not wait 5 years. So that's where I've landed on this.
Okay, thank you. We're leaving a little bit of flexibility here, mainly for clarification. Trustee Pattison?
Yeah, I do have a question, and with no disrespect, I'm just wondering why this is coming so late, and I understand we have a full schedule of we're in budget times and everything. Because my concern, and we've seen this, during our term, is that sometimes these motions come forward and there's such a timeline available that we can't say no, even though in our hearts and what we believe in people who are moving this board forward and making these big decisions, we're making a decision that we don't want to make because we're on a strict timeline. So that's my biggest concern here. I mean, the 3%, it seems, I know we're trying to do the cost recovery and that's fantastic, but there's information that's coming to us that might say, well, okay, well, maybe we should only do 2% next year. Maybe we should do an 1% increase over a couple of years or something because we're afraid of how our community partners are feeling towards these changes. And now Alex is also talking about a review sooner than later, and I think I would agree to that. So I don't really need an answer to the why so late. I just want to make a statement that the best we can when we're faced with these motions, if we can have them earlier so that we can feel that we can defer a motion so that we can have a little more information, especially knowing that there's more information coming after we've already made the decision. So that's my comment on that. Thank you.
Fair enough, and I think that's noted. Thanks, Trustee Pattison. Any further clarification, debate, random thoughts, stories? So to the referral is to move the entire motion back to the June 6th Finance and Facilities Committee. All in favor of the referral? Trustees Bingham, Beatty, Pattison, Mulholland, student trustees Jail and High. Those opposed, trustees Hicks, Johnstone, White, Van Geffen, Danko, and Trustee Archer, are you for or against?
I'm for.
For, okay, thank you. So that's 5-5. The motion is defeated. So we're back to the motion on the floor as is. So unless there's another motion, we would vote on what we see in the report. Does anyone have another motion, or are we ready to vote? Trustee Johnstone?
I would like to move part 2 and defer parts 1 and 3.
Okay, so part 2 is, well, all of it's currently on the floor, so the motion could be to defer 1 and 3, and then that would just leave 2 remaining here with us right now. So do you move to defer, or rather refer 1 and 3? Yes, that makes sense. Heather hasn't kicked me yet. Do we have a seconder for that referral? Trustee Danko, thank you. Speakers to that motion, you're good, Trustee? Go ahead.
I clarified my points earlier.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Danko, good. Trustee Hicks.
You've already defeated on the referral 1 and 3. You can't bring that back. How can you bring it back when it's being included in a defeated referral motion?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the question Trustee Van Geffen asked earlier. He was going to try to amend the referral. and the suggestion was no, we'd have to either withdraw it or have it defeated and then make a new referral. So unfortunately, we didn't allow Trustee Van Geffen to amend it. So we could, if it's a new motion, in this case it is, we could have a new referral because we were unable to separate them before. Not the cleanest answer in the world, but essentially that was the position I took in consultation with Heather when Greg asked the question. So we would entertain that because it is different than the original deferral, because it packages the motions separate differently, that is. Yes. So to be consistent, I'm sticking to my previous logic. Thank you. Okay, so the referral motion moved and seconded would refer items 1 and 3 back to Finance and Facilities on June 6th. Questions, comments? Okay, to the motion, all in favor? Trustees Bingham, Beatty, Pattison, Johnstone, White, Van Geffen, Danko, student trustees JL High. Those opposed, trustees Hicks, Mulholland, and trustee Archer, for or against?
In favor.
In favor, thank you.
For.
Perfect. So the motion carries. So 1 and 3 will go back to June 6th for the, I guess, longer term planning for rental rates. In terms of the most immediate action, that would be number 2, is currently and remains on the floor for this report. It already has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate strictly on item 2 of the motion? Simply item 2 of the motion. It's been moved and seconded. Any debate or questions? All in favor of the item 2 portion being passed tonight? Those in favor? Trustees Hicks, Mulholland, Johnstone, White, Van Geffen, Danko, student trustees JL High. Those opposed? Trustees Bingham, Beatty, Pattison, trustee Archer, are you for or against?
Oppose.
Opposed, thank you. I think that's 6-4, so the motion carries. That concludes this report, so we'll see 1 and 3 back at the committee. And for September, we can clearly communicate a rental increase for 3%. Thank you for everyone's patience as we work through that process. We are now on item number 10, Parent Involvement Committee. As we switch gears, we'll go to Trustee Danko, who attended the meeting. Trustee Danko.
Thank you. And through the chair, the Parent Involvement Committee met on May the 8th. We had Amy Leeming-Cote, the HWDSB Foundation Development Officer, attend the meeting, and she shared the work and the function of the foundation with the committee. The communication plan that has been, the draft communication plan that's been developed was presented to the committee, and they had the opportunity to provide feedback. They elected a new chair and vice chair and had a number of standing updates. And with that, I'd like to move to receive the report.
Thank you, Trustee Danko. Would anyone like to make a referral? No. Seconder, Trustee Beatty. He seconded with a friendly gesture. Questions, comments? All in favor? Oh, Trustee Hicks, you have a question. My apologies. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, under C elections, why the vice chairs for 1 year and the chairs for 2 years?
Thank you. Trustee Danko?
That's part of their terms of reference for the committee. They have 2-year members and 1-year members, and I think that allows a 1-year member to be the vice chair.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. The 11, resolution to committee of the whole, private session as per Education Act 207 2B. Mover? Trustee Bingham, seconded. Trustee Danko, all in favor? That is unanimous. We'll move to the side room and we'll be back in public session shortly.
least try this just once. Should I do it? Should I do this?
Okay, we're gonna do it. Just do it. Everything's good.
Just a small little caress.
Let me speak.
There's none left.
Hello.
Hey, Kathy, we're back in public session. We're going to get started soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Six, perfect. We have quorum. We are now back in public session. Item 12, report from Committee of the Whole, private session, May 28th, verbal report. We'll go to the Vice Chair, Trustee Johnstone.
Thank you. Through the chair, it is my pleasure to present the report of the private session of the Committee of the Whole held earlier this evening. That the Human Resources Committee report from May 7, 2018 be approved. That a staff report related to transportation be received. That a staff report related to the downtown community hub be received. That a staff report related to benefits for non-union HWDSB employees be received.
Thank you very much. So that's a number of motions within that. You're moving the combined motions. Do we have a seconder? Greg Van Geffen, thank you. The motions are on the floor. Would anyone like to separate one of the above motions? Which one would you like to separate?
The transportation, please.
Thank you. So everything excluding transportation is part of the motion on the floor right now. All in favor of those motions? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. The one remaining is the transportation report. The motion is to receive. Do trustees have any additional comments, questions on that item? Trustee Van Geffen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have two motions that I'd like to put forward.
Okay, first motion.
That the transportation policy be placed on the fall work plan for the policy committee.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Bingham, thank you. Questions, comments? Do you want to speak briefly to that, Trustee Van Geffen?
Given the discussions tonight and trying to keep this discussion in the public realm, I believe that this is the ideal time to bring this policy forward.
Thank you. So with that, further discussion? Questions, comments? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Second motion.
Requesting staff to bring a report to Finance and Facilities on the financial requirements needed to positively impact the driver shortage crisis through, but not limited to, policy changes and efficiency studies.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Johnstone, thank you. Speaking to that briefly, Trustee Van Geffen.
I'll hold.
You'll hold, okay. I guess it's pretty descriptive. It speaks for itself. Other questions, comments to the motion? Trustee Danko, thank you.
Thanks to Trustee Van Geffen for bringing this motion forward. As he highlighted, this is actually a crisis that impacts the safety, the well-being, the ability to learn for many of our students. And so as part of it going to Finance and Facilities, I hope that we can take immediate action and send a letter to the ministry that's very, very clear that the ministry has identified the issue, and they've done that this year by providing a driver incentive. So they recognize this as a problem. They also are not funding boards the same size equally, and so we can clearly articulate that. They're forcing boards to go through pupil accommodation reviews, and yet we have not had any related increase in transportation funding coming from the ministry. They're spending money to increase the number of FI teachers available, but there's no money to provide services to students that need to access those programs. And then they restrict us with funding by saying that we must balance our budget, and here is your envelope for transportation. Basically, the ministry needs to tell us what they want us to do, and they can do that by either providing the funding or tell us to reduce our services. Because at this point, we don't really have a choice, aside from doing long-term planning, which we can do through finance and facilities and policy. And I think we have a lot of work to do going forward, but this really sits with the ministry, and so we need to make sure that we provide that feedback to them very clearly and quickly, not in September. This needs to happen in June. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And just a clarification, are you moving that motion now, or are you suggesting that the Finance Committee consider that on June 6th?
I'm suggesting strongly that they consider it on June 6th, and I think it can flow through finance.
And then please send your notes as well. That was a pretty good list that I'm sure will save
I'll write it up.
a number of folks' time. But thank you very much for that. Further, I saw Trustee Johnson. Was it? Okay, so Trustee Johnson and Trustee Beatty.
To the letter as well. It strongly needs to highlight the impact on student learning when you have 200 students late for school every day, and the impact on student learning and achievement. That needs to be highlighted, as well as the impact on health and safety. When students are having to wait outside in extreme weather, there are families where driving to school is not an option. And so they're either missing school that day or they're putting themselves at risk being outside that long. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Johnstone. Trustee Beatty?
Thank you. And through the chair, to build on the comments from Trustee Danko, this problem did not exist to this severity prior to this ministry's insistence to go through an RFP process in 2013. And I can't stress strongly enough that this ministry needs to own up to the mistakes that it's made and come up with a more permanent solution than what's being offered. And I wouldn't mind using some strong language in that letter to point out that this is squarely at their feet and they need to come up with a solution.
Thank you. You might have to write that letter sooner rather than later. The further discussion. Trustee Pattison.
Just quickly, Chair White. So I imagine in this letter we'll probably have some numbers to kind of identify where our shortfalls are. But can we also look at the future reviews that we have upcoming, and maybe look at the past 3 reviews and kind of on average how many buses were needed as a result of those closures, and looking forward what that could what kind of impact that could have us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Trustee Van Geffen.
So just clarification, it has been thrown out there. This motion did not have a date set to it to return to finance and facilities, and it has then now incorporated itself into the discussion that it's coming in June the 6th. So just a response from staff that this will be possible. I mean, I can say whatever I want as the chair of the committee, but staff have to generate this report.
So just in fairness to staff, I don't think the report will be coming on June 6th. I think that would be an opportunity for trustees to ask questions and scope the report. And staff can share some of their ideas and what they have at that point. But I don't think we're expecting a thorough written report. So through that discussion, that's where the letter that we've somewhat thrown around here right now, I'm sure will emerge, as well as that scoping for the forthcoming report.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions, comments? All in favor? That is unanimous. We'll move now to our patient student trustees. Thank you very much. We'll go to the student trustees report, local activities, etc. Who's starting? Student trustee Jail. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm going to start with OSTA. So I recently, this past weekend, attended AGM, so the annual general meeting of the Ontario Student Trustees Association. I attended with the 2 incoming student trustees, and it was a great experience for myself and for the incomings. So they Cameron and Tara got the chance to be introduced to the organization, to get some professional development, and to network with other incoming student trustees from across the province. And for me as an outgoing, it was a good recap on the year and also an opportunity to learn some next steps. So we listened to an alumni panel of student trustees from the past years, and it was cool to see where they ended up and how they actually used the skills from this position in their careers and post-secondary education. So we had some great keynote speakers, including Mark Kielberger of the We organization, Craig Kielberger's brother, which was really cool. And they also held elections for the new executive council, which runs OSTA through the year. We don't have any HWDSB representation on that, but the incomings are considering running for positions as committee co-chairs or on the public board council cabinet. There was an alumni gala to close off the year as well. And in terms of the working groups, they're actually now called working groups, not committees. That was a recent change in the organization. So this past year, I've been working with the Progress Working Group, now called Student Achievement Working Group. And so we finished off the Student Trustee Handbook and are going to be passing that along to the General Assembly really soon, which is exciting. And we also ran icebreakers at the conference, which was fun as always. And for the second part of that working group update, I'll pass it over to Student Trustee Hai.
So I am co-chair of Indigenous Relations. To cap off the year, we just made sure that we had all our emailing lists set for Northern boards and Northern trustees, Indigenous trustees. We made sure that land acknowledgements and the fact that at least one Indigenous speaker a year could come to conferences was enshrined in policy, and that's about it. Local activities. So we're finishing up our constitution for the HWDSB Senate. It'll come to our senators at our next and final Senate meeting, June 14th. We're looking at getting sweaters for senators, which I think is going well. And that's about it for Senate. Another local thing that happened was Sunday, the conference that I've been planning all year finally happened. It was a resounding success, 80 plus delegates for our first ever year, and we're deeply grateful to the board for their sponsorship and support. And yeah, it went really well. So thank you.
Awesome. I know we were all paying very close attention to the coverage at that event, and it sounds like it was a phenomenal blast to get more than 80 students out interested in kind of a mock city council. It just sounds fantastic. So congratulations for that. And I'm sure next year we'll triple our support. I can say that. Make sure you grab this clip online if you're wondering. Questions, comments? Thank you very much. Oh, yes, Trustee Danko, go ahead.
Thank you for all the work you've done this year. I was just wondering, through the chair, the grade 7 and 8 elementary Senate, how did that go this year? If you could sort of give us a year in review, what were the highlights and what were the challenges?
I think that a lot of the good work that we did with Elementary Senate revolves around education, learning how to be a leader and how to be a compassionate leader. So starting up our tradition of doing a word of the meeting where we would talk about different concepts and different things that affect the lives of marginalized students was one of our prouder moments, I think, with Elementary Senate. What else, Morgan?
Just to build on that, just giving them the vocabulary to be efficient and like well-rounded leaders in that sense. We also brought back some consultations to them from the board, like the school calendar one was a particularly productive one that we had. And they were learning how the board works, how the processes work, what the language they need to use is to communicate their thoughts on things like that. So that was other progress that we saw for sure.
Cool, thank you. Any further questions? Thanks again. Mr. Director?
Thank you to the chair. 3 items I'd like to highlight. Over the spring and up till June, you will see this is the month I call of consultation and listening around our annual plan regarding our student voice survey, our staff voice survey that is out in June, and our parent voice survey. And the real push is for each school site to have their local baseline data. We saw an increase in that last year, and we're starting to see a greater increase in response rates through those surveys. Also, in student learning achievement, we've been speaking exec council about this is our push to June, that we have our students in front of us until the end of June. So reading by grade 1 and all students graduating, and EQAO math is occurring right now as we over the week. That this is a key time for us to continue to push and support and make sure the resources we have are supporting students to reach those goals. And lastly, it's hard to believe that we're entering into year 2 is coming to an end around the strategic directions. Priorities and goals still remain the same, but we will be engaging next week, Exec Council, with key managers and school leaders around looking at our annual plan and what potential tweaks to the strategies we might be making for the 18-19 school year on our annual plan, because we know that we need our leaders who are implementing this also need to own it and provide us input. So that's my update.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Questions, comments? Beautifully spoken. As for the chair's report, I will be incredibly brief because I don't think I'll receive as kind of a comment. The only thing I will say is there's a provincial election next week. We don't meet again until June 11th, but remind everyone, vote. What do they say? Vote often, you know, why not? Early and often, that's right. But of course, as we know through OPSPA, our own local advocacy and whatnot, the province has a huge impact on anything that we do. So keep education, you know, at the front of all of our minds, I'm sure, as we prioritize the future of our students here at HWDSB. So we'll see you at the polls on the 7th, and on the 8th, we'll reassess. So with that, motion to adjourn. Van Geffen, Danko, all in favor? Moved, carried. Thank you.